Good evening, and welcome to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. That's me, and welcome to the King. How are you doing this evening? Well, we are carrying on with our theme. And as you know, when we do our lives, we go around the world and look at different countries and cultures in terms of the theme in question. And our theme at the moment is shapeshifters. And I was asked in the last live to do Greece. So tonight we are going to look at the concept of shapeshifters in Greece. And what is out there. Now, we started this particular journey with werewolves, which was also a request. The idea of werewolves, where it comes from and why. But we realized very quickly, of course, that werewolves are not necessarily everywhere. So we moved on from werewolves to other shapeshifters. Now, of course, werewolves owe a lot of their history from Greece, with the very name of werewolves, lycanthropes, coming from the Greek king Lycaon. Hey, Sniper B. So, in that sense, werewolves are absolutely a Greek concept. But we have also discovered that they are far from the only shapeshifters that might be found in Greek mythology. And with that regard, we have come back to Greece to consider all of the other shapeshifters and what importance they might have, because we actually have a number of different things to consider, and not just shapeshifters. Greek mythology is full of all kinds of things. Hey there to Heart. Awesome that you're back. Is your friend coming along with you? Flames, hey. Hey, all the usual suspects are joining tonight. That is truly awesome. I'm very pleased to see that. So welcome to you all. I think tonight's going to be an interesting one. So absolutely welcome to you all. And just to start ourselves off, I'm going to just remind everybody that on this particular channel we have only got one rule, and that is don't be rude. If you're rude, we give you the boot. And the reason for that is we have unfortunately had a number of trolls, which is not a terribly wonderful thing when they do their level best to ruin it for everybody. So when we get trolls, we give them the boot. But other than that, we approve very much of agreeing and disagreeing, and comments of all kinds. Please do give plenty and plenty of comments. And of course, much thanks for the likes from those who have just liked. Do like, share, subscribe, and all of the other good things, because we rely on it, of course, to keep the channel going. It does make a very big difference. So in that regard, please do feel free. Add your comments, add your thoughts. We do this, I remind you, because we find it interesting. We are curious about the weird and the wonderful and all of the good things that might go along with that. We neither promote nor deride. We have a lot of people with a lot of different beliefs and a lot of different cultures on this channel, so we do our best not to particularly insult anybody. We are not saying anything is true or false or right or wrong. We make our own decisions in that regard. welcome to the original stag. And Alessandro. So with that said, Greece. What do they actually say about these things? And it's interesting because the Greek mythology has two categories to consider in this regard, by and large. You have the shapeshifters, which of course, like werewolves, change and do so for various reasons, or in some occasions it's done to them, of course. But then you also get what we can refer to as the static hybrids. Now, what is a static hybrid? A static hybrid is someone that is neither quite animal or human, but parts of both, but which stays in that form. The most famous example, of course, which we will have a look at, is the Minotaur, which was part man, part bull. Bami Wemi, we are talking mostly about shapeshifters, and today's country of topic is Greece. But we will be also looking into the, as I've just been saying, the static hybrids. So we have a number of things in mythology to look at and see what is out there. Now, it's interesting because a great deal of our language is influenced heavily by the Greek. So when you talk of a person or being that is part human, part animal, the word for it is a therianthrope. And of course, it comes from the Greek. You are entirely correct there, Mangosaurus. So those are indeed ones we will look at. And in fact, centaurs and minotaurs and the Sphinx, in fact, are Greek. So those all come from the Greek mythology. The Chimera as well is Greek, absolutely. So you are correct there as well. So in terms of etymology, theros means an animal, and anthropos, of course, means a person. So a therianthrope is an animal person. And yes, hippogriffs are also Greek, and so are mermaids. So of course, many of these come from other cultures as well. You will know, of course, the Sphinx is found in Egypt as well. So absolutely, the Chimera is also found in Middle Eastern mythology as well. So there's quite a few out there, and they are indeed very interesting. So I hope you have a nice warm drink. I have tea tonight, which is particularly good. And let's get kicking. So we'll start with the static hybrids because they are very interesting and how they may or may not have come about. And centaurs are at the top of our list, possibly the most famous. Thank you very, very much for the like and the follow there, Mangosaurus. I do appreciate it. Now, the most important or famous of the centaurs was Chiron. And generally, centaurs were said to be wild. They were quite often violent. They were not your tame or happy neighbors in that regard. But Chiron was an exception, and he was known to be exceptionally wise and a very, very skilled healer. Though, of course, as we well know, he was the one responsible for killing Heracles, which the Romans called Hercules. So we know that he had a little bit of a wild side, as it were, in that regard. And in fact, he used, I believe it was the blood of a hydra soaked into a skin, which he convinced Heracles to wear, and that killed Heracles. However, because Heracles was such an important hero, he was then raised to demigod status and became an immortal himself. So he didn't eventually entirely die in that regard. But yes, centaurs, however, were considered to be a race. Thanks to Joshua for followers. Do appreciate that as well. So they were not punished into their form, and they did not choose their form. Centaurs just were. They were born that way. And some people think that possibly your centaurs were in fact the Mongols, who were truly famed horsemen, and were known to be a big deal riding horses. But contrary to what many believe, horses were not well known in most of Europe. They came from the east. So I imagine that it's entirely possible that it was believed that at first sight that the Mongols were centaurs, a hybrid creature in that regard. And this is, of course, kind of promoted, if you will, because centaurs were known for their archery skill, and one of the most famous bows to this day is the Mongol bow. And as Mangosaurus points out, the domestication of horses happened around 4 to 3000 BCE on the Eurasian steppes. Yes, it did, but Western Europe was not well known for its horses. So they weren't as well known in most of what we would have considered to be the civilized world, so to speak, which of course meant Greece mostly. Greece, Rome, those areas. Shiloh? Wat sê? Ek verstaan nie. Gaan jy nou toeslaap? Ah, Endless Thoughts, my dear. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to see you on board. We are doing Greece today. I am very glad to see you on. Hope everything is going fantastic with you. It's a little bit warmer down my side tonight, which is hugely wonderful, given how cold it has been. Thank there to user 384 etc for the sharing. Have I ever done South Africa? Well, not in terms of shapeshifters yet. We will do. Do I know Ryan Jenkins? No, I do not. But with that said, the next interesting one, and here's a really fascinating archaeological tidbit. As we know, the Minotaur was called the Minotaur for a particular reason. Ryan Jenkins said bad stuff about me. He can if he wishes. I don't know him, and therefore I'm almost completely certain he doesn't know me, and therefore he is saying whatever he wants to, but it doesn't really matter. So, yep, I don't care. And thank you to user 384 etc. That's very kind of you. And thank you to Endless Thoughts for the friendship badge. That's awesome. So Much thanks. So the Minotaur was called the Minotaur because of King Minos. Now, King Minos was a real person, and recently they found ruins of a place that they think might have been the palace of King Minos, which is pretty damn cool because it even has a maze in it, which, sorry, I have to do this because bad jokes are my thing. It's amazing. Sorry. Yes, thank you for the Brain Nut King. Thank you for that. But let's tell briefly the story of the Minotaur, because he's a special one insofar as there is supposedly only one Minotaur. While there are many, many, many centaurs, there is only one Minotaur. And the reason is the wife of King Minos. Yes, you are quite correct, Mangosaurus, near modern-day Heraclea in Crete, which is actually ironic because Heraklion is named after the goddess Hera. And I believe she had a hand in this particular myth, and not in a good way. She was known to be a bit spiteful in that regard. So there you go. Thank you to Caleb and to Ask Me My Name, who is hiding away in there. I do appreciate you joining on. So King Minos' wife, the queen, who obviously was quite an important person, through reasons possibly involving Zeus, who was known to change his shape and do some fairly dubious things. Let's just say they had a baby together, which Hera did not approve of. Huge thanks for all those shares and likes. To all of you, that's very, very kind of you. I appreciate that greatly. And thank you there for the rose as well, to the Brainrot King. So Zeus had his way with the queen, and the resultant child was the Minotaur, who was cursed with madness by Hera, who was very upset, of course, with Zeus getting off and doing things that he shouldn't, which he did on a regular basis, to be fair. He was a bit of a boy. But now this Minotaur was a little bit out of its nut, being half bull, half man, and apparently was carnivorous. So King Minos, not really knowing what else to do about the whole damn thing, locked the creature in a labyrinth built under the palace, and would feed the Minotaur, because at the time Minos was pretty powerful. He was the king of Crete, and he would get from all of his different subject and vassal kings the most beautiful man and the most beautiful woman, young teens really, and send them into the labyrinth where the Minotaur would nosh on them. And when the time came around for the next sacrifice, obviously the hero Theseus volunteered to get involved, and he did indeed do so, and went down, as the myth goes, famously with the assistance of Ariadne, who gave him a piece of string, which is far more important than you might think, and hid a sword for him. And when he was cast into the labyrinth, he used the string to find his way through the labyrinth, and thereafter, more importantly, find his way back. And the sword he used to kill the Minotaur. So that stopped the sacrifices in the end, And of course, Theseus ran off with Ariadne. So the Minotaur was the only Minotaur. It was the Minotaur in that regard. But many of the creatures that are static hybrids, of course, have many kinds. And one of those which is very important are, of course, the satyrs. And these satyrs are the servants and companions to the great god of wine, Dionysus. And the reason that they are important to us in modern worlds is because their leader was the god Pan. And these creatures were capable not only of running wild and having huge fun and inciting parties of note, but also of creating huge terror in their enemies. And from that we get the word panic from the god Pan. Extreme mindless terror. Not half horse, Mangosaurus, but yes, half goat, and the bottom half in particular. So they do say that occasionally horse features may have been a part in history, but when I went looking for stories about it, I could find none referring to them as satyrs. Only the half-horse always seemed to be centaurs, but absolutely the goats. And then, of course, their human heads did have horns. They are particularly known for wine, music, and parties, which is pretty cool. But again, they're far more dangerous than you might think. They're a fairly scary bunch when they want to be. And so was Dionysus. He's generally sort of known in common literature as being this fat old drunk guy. And he certainly could be. Not bagpipes, panpipes. Now, panpipes are quite famous, and they're still used today, and they are very, very beautiful. They are a set of joined reeds with different lengths, which when blown into, you know how if you take a bottle and blow into the top in a certain way it makes a tone? They work exactly like that. And the different lengths of the reeds in the row makes different sound, different pitches of tone. And so you can play some very, very beautiful music. Yes, and they are called panpipes literally because of the god Pan, who was the god of the satyrs and the companions to Dionysus. So yeah, very interesting and quite deadly, because they could cause entire armies to flee because of their ability to inspire panic. But they could also inspire people to party hard, whether they wanted to or not, including, shall we say, young ladies, which apparently satyrs were quite famous for. But we won't go into that. Now, of course, they are not the only ones. The other important one are sirens. And many people think that sirens are like mermaids, but that's actually a complete mistake. Sirens are not half fish like mermaids. Sirens are half bird, which is very interesting. So they were known for their singing, and they lured sailors to their death with this enchanted singing. And if you've ever read the legend of the Argonauts, you will know that that was one of the great things where when they passed the island where the sirens were, they blocked their ears with wax except for their captain. I forget who the captain, Jason, who insisted that he wanted to hear it, and they tied him to the mast so he couldn't do anything, but let him hear the singing so he could know what it was like. So he got to hear it, but not do anything. Yes, the sirens got around. So they were supposed to be a bird with a woman's head, far less pretty than your stories of mermaids in that regard, but nevertheless deadly. It was their voice that counted. The other ones that they were quite similar to, rather interestingly, but who did not have beautiful voices, were the harpies, which were sort of the ugly sister, if you will. And they were also with bodies of birds and the heads of women, and they were most known for snatching food, and they were used by the gods for divine punishment. Famous cases where they had one guy that got a bit uppity with the gods, and his punishment was that he would forever go hungry, and every time he found food or was about to eat, it would be stolen away by the harpies. So that was one of the Greek legends as well. It was quite an interesting story in that regard. But yep, sirens and harpies, bird women. Then of course you had the echidna. And the echidna you might recognize the description of because it was very similar to the naga. This is the Greek version, the monstrous mother of many famous Greek monsters, in fact. A half beautiful woman and half deadly snake. Then of course you have the Sphinx, which we know very famously, with its riddles and more, with the head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of an eagle. We will look into that a little more as well. Dogmen are an interesting one because they are also apparently your static hybrid, but they're not Greek. Interestingly enough, you do get them, Driller, in Welsh mythology and in Scots mythology. You get them in a couple of other places. I forget exactly where now off the top of my head. But they stay in their shape, and they're kind of more like the shape that we think of the werewolf as being in modern stories. But they were thought to live in the Middle East, and they are mentioned in certain tales. They stay in the form they are. The cyanocephali is the Greek word for them, cyanocephali. They're not big with most of the Greek myths, so they're more of a herd thing. Now, Driller Georgia, you should have been on the last one where we covered the berserker, because of course you have 4 different kinds of berserker. You have the bear warriors, the wolf warriors, the Alfhethna. You have the boar warriors and the raven warriors. So they absolutely do, and of course it's tied in with their rather interesting dual forms of magic, the Sether and the Galder. So I will be eventually uploading that as I get there onto my YouTube channel, where I put all the lives. So you can go back and have a check on it if you feel so moved. But now that you've mentioned dogmen, who were the important Greek shapeshifters? Well, of course, the one that gave us the name lycanthropy, King Lycaon, first and most famous of the Greek werewolves, King Lycaon of Arcadia, who was punished by Zeus for impiety and cannibalism. And he was the first Greek werewolf. But he was not the first werewolf by any means if we go around the world. The other important people who were notably shapeshifters include Proteus, one of the ancient sea gods who could change into all kinds of different forms, and indeed, because of his prophetic skill, in order to avoid giving prophetic information, would change into animals to escape, including a lion, a snake, and even water itself. Zeus, of course, as we well know, was famous for changing his shape, usually so he could go and seduce someone. Not necessarily. You get different kinds. So the first form of lycanthrope can't, when it is a curse. Because it is a curse, they change when the curse forces them. The second variety changes or can change at certain times if they choose. But there are sometimes consequences to the choosing. The third kind uses sorcery to change, which might mean that they're not a true lycanthrope, and therefore they can do it whenever they like, as long as they have their sorceress facility. Usually it's a belt or a cloak or something like that. And the last variety are the born lycanthropes that can change whenever they want because it's natural to them. So that at least is of the human lycanthropes. When it comes to shape-shifting, you do get certain creatures that can do it naturally, so they can do it whenever they like, and of course the gods can do as they please because, well, they're gods. So Zeus could and did change all the time, usually to seduce women. So that's that sort of side of things. And then of course you have the nymphs, the most famous sea nymph being Thetis, who was the mother of Achilles. And they could change into all kinds of things. But then again, the nymphs were semi-immortal and semi-divine. So they could do it for that reason whenever they liked. But a sorcerer in Greek stories who could transform, but more importantly, could transform others, was Circe. And she was famous for it. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus's companions are all turned into pigs. And as one female friend of mine commented, not much change there. So you may make of that as you will. I can see all of the men going, rough, and all of the girls going, yeah. Settings for Circe. Well, because it was Circe doing the changing, the men transformed didn't have the power to change between. It was done to them. And eventually Circe did release them due to what Odysseus did, etc., etc. I believe she fell in love with him and he pretended to love her, so she had changed them back, and then they ran away and dumped her, which was a little bit unkind, but, well, I suppose. So we have a number of different forms in Greece. As we said, the centaur is probably the most important. They may or may not have developed because the Minoans, who were the proto-Greeks in a great many ways, did not know horses. And when they first encountered horse riders, which probably were the early Mongols, that's how they thought of the centaurs, because they believed them to be that. Apparently not, which is why they change, Driller. So it seems that when they're in human form, they remain human. But when they change, they gain the extra abilities, which is why they do the change, because it helps. Huge thanks for those likes, people. Keep them coming. We love them. So, yeah, that's the point of being able to change, if that makes sense. Now, whatever the origin, the legend of the centaur endured right through into Roman times, during which time there was actually a huge scientific debate that went on whether or not the creatures really existed, kind of like the Yeti argument of today. The centaur has been present in storytelling ever since, and of course even turned up, as we know, in the Harry Potter films. So a very famous and much loved creature no matter what. Now the echidna, as we said, is half woman, half snake, and she was known as the mate to the most fearsome of the snake men, Typhon, and mother to many of the most horrible monsters of all times. The first reference to echidna is in the mythology of Hesiod, which was called the Theogony, written around the turn of the 7th to 8th centuries BC. And it's quite possible that even the, for then, more modern, as in medieval stories of Europe about dragons were in part based on the stories of echidna. If I comment, and show it to more people. He's trying to make a comment that TikTok will probably block or ban Driller. So he's using icons to break up the words so as not to alert the automatic AI. Yeah, I'm struggling. Think the live is active and show it to more people. If I comment, random, it might actually, it might very well do that. Oh, that's pretty cool. So the echidna was important as a proto-monster as well as a monster in and of itself. Why the harpy? Now again, the earliest reference to the harpy comes from Hesiod. Ovid, the poet, also referred to it and described it as a human vulture. It's the source of destructive winds and is said to bring malcontent. And even today, if a woman is known to be annoying and causing trouble, she may be referred to as a harpy. In many ways, Driller, the sirens were almost the better off ones in that regard. The harpies had it rough. They didn't have the enchanting voices. And we do know that if you nag at someone, I might even say to you, stop harping on, which of course comes from harpy. So yeah, the harpies were the ones with all the bad press. The sirens at least had an enchanting voice, but they were described very similar. And one wonders if they were related. Now the next really important one to talk about are the Gorgons. And there were three. The one that we all know, of course, is Medusa. But there is no such thing as a Medusa. Medusa was the name of a particular one. They were called Gorgons. Now, the Gorgons originally Steno Euryale and Medusa were entirely human except for their hair, which was made of snakes. And they were very fearsome because of their ability to turn people to stone. And there were three sisters. Similar characters appear in the earliest centuries of Greek storytelling with Gorgon-like creatures that may also have had scales and claws, not just the hair. And it is thought that the three sisters were somehow an evolution of the original. So these were the beginning creatures, if you will. And we do know that when Medusa was rather unfairly slain by Perseus, yes, the woman with snake hair, comes from the story, is one of the three sisters, but they were called Gorgons. The woman in question's name was Medusa. She wasn't a Medusa. Yes, Steno Euryale and Medusa were the three sisters who were Gorgons. And Perseus went and killed Medusa, and from her blood was born the Pegasus. But I always thought it was a bit rough because they weren't doing anything. They were living out, minding their own business away from people. And it was only if people went and tried to attack them that they got turned to stone. So I kind of feel bad for them and think of them as the victim more than anything else. But of course Perseus then took Medusa's head and used it as a weapon, which is kind of cruel as well. But there you are. Now, another rather interesting one, which also comes from Greek mythology, is one that you will also know from Harry Potter, the Mandrake. But what makes that interesting is the fact that it is, rather than being an animal and a person, it is a plant and a person. Harry Potter is British, but they've pulled in a lot of mythology from all over. You never had centaurs in British mythology. You never had Pegasus or unicorns until much, much later. It was all influenced from the Greek and stuff like that. But the mandrake is a plant, and it is in fact a real plant. Mandragora is the genus, and it's found in the Mediterranean region. And the root does indeed look sort of like a person. The roots also have strong hallucinogenic properties. So I dare say if you ate any of it, it would cause you to see all sorts of things. And of course it was said that if you pulled it up from the ground, it would scream with such power that it could actually unalive you. So clearly the story has quite a lot of staying power in that regard. Of course, the next static thing. Well, love potions and fertility rituals and protection charms, yes. Certain groups of people have used them in all of those, and for divining the future, in fact, because of its hallucinogenic properties. So a lot of different uses in varying places. So there is that. Mermaids, of course, which are Greek as well. Well, the Greeks are part of Europe. and they influenced huge parts of all Europe because of their culture. So it comes through in many things, and even in the famous Leech Book of Bald, which is a very famous healing text from Britain, mandrakes are mentioned. So absolutely, you will find them even in Britain, in the UK, totally. And in, yes, to a certain degree, Scottish mythology as well. But it didn't originate with them. It came through with the Greek influence. The plant is not natural to their areas. So it comes from the area where the real plant does come from, which is the Mediterranean. It is a warm weather plant, and the UK is not really a warm weather country in that regard. I know this, it is a wet country. Very, very, very wet. I don't like it in that regard. I'm not a rain person. But yeah, the idea of the mermaid is Greek as well, but not only Greek, and we might have to go into mermaids in future, because they turn up in so many different countries and cultures, and all described the same, which might tell you something. Yeah, I'm happy that it's summer and essay as well, believe me. So the very first legend of the mermaid, the creature with the head and upper body of a lovely human woman and the lower body and tail of a fish, comes from ancient Assyria, where the goddess Atargatis transformed herself into a mermaid out of shame for accidentally killing her human lover. Now, mermaids have appeared in stories throughout all ages, and they're not always recognized as fictional. Christopher Columbus swore he saw real-life mermaids on his voyage to the New World, but of course he didn't have his cell phone handy to take a pic for us, alas. There are many stories of the mermaids. They do talk about the Irish and Scottish version, the Selkie, but I do not think that it counts, personally. Jacqueline, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. I don't think it counts because a Selkie is a specific thing and it's different. The mermaid is not a shapeshifter like the Selkie. They are what they are. Of course, Hans Christian Andersen used the mermaid legend to tell of the hopeless romance between a mermaid and a human man, and it's been turned into all kinds of stories, including in 1984, if you are old enough, and please do not comment, Splash with Daryl Hannah, which no, I will not comment on. And of course Disney's blockbuster The Little Mermaid. But the original story, so you know, is I do apologize, is truly horrible and ends very, very badly, unlike the Disney version, just so you know. We've already gone into the Minotaur with Theseus and Ariadne, which of course has caused a lot of the stories after to take it on such, believe it or not, the original epic horror, which none of you would realize was the epic horror, the famous 1/3 of the trilogy, Dante's Inferno. Yes, the original horror, which was pretty damned cool for its time. But more modern, Hellboy had a Minotaur, and some would say that in a way the character from Beauty and the Beast might be a version of the same myth. Yeah, that's pushing it a little bit. Have you ever played the game Skyrim? I have played Daggerfall, I have played Oblivion, and I have played Skyrim, and I very, very briefly got a chance to play ESO. I have played Rothkrier as well, and I am very much looking forward to the next one. The one that I never got to play but wanted to, just to say that I did, was Arena. I never got around to that. And I didn't play Hammerfell either. But you are absolutely correct. I have not only played them, and I still play them to this day. The game I go to on my computer is Skyrim. So yeah. And yes, they too have got Minotaurs, and of course Oblivion has a whole quest connected to Minotaurs, which is quite cool. And yes, it is very, very good. Now, we've spoken already of the satyrs, we've spoken of the sirens, but what about the Sphinx? Where does the Sphinx really come from? Now, the Sphinx, as we know, is that lion-bodied, eagle-winged, snake-tailed and human-headed creature. Now, the interesting thing is that you get different kinds of Sphinx, and our Egyptian Sphinx, if you go and look at it, you'll realize it's wingless. Whereas the Greek ones had wings. Much thanks for the likes, much thanks for the heart there, Jacqueline. That is very, very kind of you. I do appreciate it greatly. So you get different types of Sphinx. The Greek one can fly. The Egyptian one apparently can't. The Sphinx is important in the tale of Oedipus, who answered the riddle correctly but suffered as a consequence. What's interesting is that in all of the Greek stories, the Sphinx is a woman. But in the Egyptian stories, the Sphinx is a man. We also find in Southeast Asia a Sphinx-type creature as well. So it seems that more than one culture believes in them, which you can take from a purely scientific view, which explains our way of understanding the animal side of humanity, shamanic rituals, psychological delusions, rah-dee-rah-dee-rah. Or you could go the way which we prefer because it's far more cool and say that these things once exist. Be careful in case they come back. Which is far cooler, let's face it. But moving along, we have a lot more to cover. As we say, we've spoken of the top ones, but there were others. There was Maestra, Autolycus, and Periclymenus, which also needs to be spoken of. And before we jump into that, and Metis as well. But before we jump into that, we need to talk of a couple of others. The Chimera, which was a very strange hybrid creature, a lion with a goat's head, a snake's tail, and bearing other bits as well, sometimes dependent on the story. A very interesting case that turns up in Greek myth, which really is strange because she's Celtic. Yeah, a big ball of different animal parts, just as you are a big ball of different fruit parts. A Mangosaurus, which is cool. I'm teasing, of course. So yes, but how would a Greek goddess get into a Celtic goddess get into Greek mythology? And I really can't give a good answer, but we will try. And that's the Morrigan. So let's dive in a little deeper. And we are going to start with the Impusa, as we know. A shape-shifting female said to have one leg made of copper. She was under the command of Hecate, who, as we know, is the goddess of magic. They are a kind of ghost or phantom, similar to the Lamai or the Mormolaikeia, thought to lure and seduce young men, and then when they've got them in their clutches, feed on them. Now, the Impusa was defined in the Sudas and by the Kratis of Malice as a demonic phantom with shape-shifting abilities. In the plays written by Aristophanes, she could change into varying animals or be a woman. She's supposed to be one-legged, having either one brass leg or one donkey's leg, which might explain why in rude ways she is referred to as anochole, which means donkey-footed, but it also could just mean one-footed. In the comedy The Frogs by Aristophanes, she appears before Dionysus and his slave Xanthias on their way to the underworld. And it might be the slave's practical joke to frighten his master. Xanthias thus sees or pretends to see the Impusa transform into a bull, a mule, and a beautiful woman and a dog, and reassures the being has indeed one copper or brass leg and a large amount of cow dung. Now, the Impusa was a being sent by Hecate, or could have been a form of Hecate, as Aristophanes says in his Tageniste. But how exactly it all worked is not terribly clear. We know that in the late antiquity, they became known as a kind of female vampire that the Greeks had, who would prey on young men both for seduction reasons and for eating them, sometimes both, sometimes at the same time, because why not? In the life of Apollonius of Tyana, they are referred to just as ghosts, phasma. But it seems that different ways they turned out into different forms in that way, and it moved through time dependent on which level of the culture they were in, what they were thought to be, but by and large one-legged and dangerous. So if you see anybody with one leg, the other one being made of brass or of a donkey's leg, run away if you're a man. They don't say what happens to women, so maybe you're okay. Not too sure. Much thanks for the shares there, by the way. But the Morrigan. The Morrigan is the goddess of battles. She is entirely Celtic. She's associated with war, fate, foretelling doom, death, victory in battle, and she often appears as a crow, the Bav, which comes to eat the dead. She's often considered to be the original Banshee, which we nowadays know as the Banshee. So the one that will lets you know that somebody will be dying by showing you bloodied clothing or occasionally washing it in a river. She's very important in Celtic mythology. She is one of three sisters, which are known as the three Morigna, Bav, Maka, and the Morrigan. And indeed, in Ireland, there are places that refer to them, such as Armain Macha, the hill of Macha, and they are Anu. They are part of the Tuatha De Danaan, as we know. Now, somehow, this entirely Celtic, shape-shifting goddess, who may or may not have been one of the wives of Nemain even, somehow got into Greek mythology, where she is known as a shapeshifter. Why? We don't know. It's very, very weird. She could have been a real person, a great queen, because one of her old names is Mara Reganis, from the Proto-Celtic, which means great queen. But that might have been a mistake. She turns up in Welsh literature as well, and of course in Arthurian stories as Morgan Le Fay. So it gets around. She turns up in the Ulster cycle, where she has a very odd relationship with Cuchulainn, and appears again in the Tainbo Regamna, which is the cattle raid of Regamain, which is quite important. The Tainbo Culain, the cattle raid of Cooley, she turns up, and Queen Maeve of Connaught is associated with the Morrigan as well, and turns up in that story briefly as well. She's the bloody queen. She likes death. She likes destruction. She likes violence. But she can be nice. She can be very nice. So there is all kinds of weirdness as regards that, but nevertheless, she's Greek as well, for some strange reason. Now, Maestra. Who is Maestra? Maestra is in fact a butterfly, a very real thing, which is pretty cool. And as it turned out, Poseidon decided he fancied her and was going to have her, and went after her. But she escaped by changing her shape and escaping Poseidon that way. So Maestra's quite important because also her family proved to be pretty important. So her grand uncle was the famous Sisyphus of Greek mythology. That is not a name for somebody who has a lisp like me. Let's just say that. Now, Glaucus was her son, which also was important. So Maestra managed to dodge Poseidon for quite a while. But unfortunately, in the end, he did get her and dragged her off to the island of Kos, where he had children with her. And they were famous children, so maybe it was a good thing, but nobody likes forced passions. Yes, you see, he violated a sacred grove and upset a goddess, and that's not something that you do. So part of his punishment was pushing the rock uphill for all of time. So yeah, he got his just rewards for doing man things he shouldn't in a female grove. A suitable punishment. Now the next interesting one. Welcome back, Jacqueline. The next interesting one is Autolycus. Now Autolycus is a very interesting name because it means the wolf itself. And he was actually a robber, a bandit, who had the power to turn himself into a wolf or make invisible the things he stole, which of course makes it very easy to say, me, thief, of what? So he lived on Mount Parnassus and was renowned among men for being cunning and for his amazing oaths. And Autolycus, in many ways, is sort of the archetypal thief, able to do all kinds of things, to steal stuff and just make it disappear. And of course, Autolycus became quite famous in stories. We see a number of different stories. Thank you to Jacqueline for the rose. That's very kind of you. You are very sweet indeed. I just spotted it now. I'm getting caught up in the story. But he could have been the son of a number of people, Philonis or Chion, but most likely was the son of Hermes, the god, the messenger god. And in Ovid's version, Autolycus was conceived after Hermes had his way with the virgin Chion, one of the early virgin births that come in mythology. But it may have been that his real father was Daedalion, and his mother might have been Telauge. Either way, I don't think it really matters. He absolutely did have, in some manner or form, at least one parent who was a god of some kind. So he got his abilities to that, and in fact, he may well have been the husband of Maestra that we have just mentioned, who could change her shape at will. So both parents could indeed change their shape as they wanted, which is pretty cool. And he became the father of Anticlea, who was another famous queen who became the wife to a great king, which may or may not matter in that regard. But he's known because it was among others that his children down the line, not his personal children, but his children's children's children, included Jason, the famous Argonaut that found the Golden Fleece. So yeah, you have all kinds of stories, and Autolycus may even have been one of the Argonauts as well, if not the most famous one. But his skills were theft and trickery. He loved to make white of black and black of white, from a hornless animal to a horned one. He was given the gift that his thievery could not be caught by anyone. Master thief, and known for stealing Sisyphus's herd right from underneath him. Sisyphus, who was known for being the very crafty king that killed his guests. But Autolycus seduced his niece, stole his brother's throne. No, Sisyphus seduced his own niece, stole his brother's throne, and was banished to Tartarus by the gods after violating a grove in order to be punished, but Autolycus nicked his cows to prove that he was a better thief, which I think is pretty cool. And of course, he taught Heracles how to wrestle. But he kind of also was a little bit of a troublemaker for Heracles, because when Autolycus stole some cattle from Euboea and Eurytus, they accused Heracles of the deed and went mad from all of the accusations. And then Heracles killed them, and another one of Eurytus's sons, Iphitus, which was one of the reasons Heracles ended up with 3 years of punishment to repent the deed. Now, what's very interesting about that, if you look at it, is it's pretty clear that Heracles was a Greek equivalent of a berserker. So you see. And that is one of the problems with berserkers. They're not controllable. Thanks again for those likes. Yes. So yes, very interesting. Autolycus was also the grandfather of Odysseus. And of course, Odysseus was the hero of the next great stories. So thereupon we have more. So lots of heroes in that regard. And then, of course, the next one is Periclymenus, who is far less known. He's the son of King Neleus and Chloris, and he was an Argonaut, but not an important one. But he could shapeshift because his grandfather was Poseidon. But Heracles killed him at Pylos, and he tried to escape in the form of an eagle, but he didn't get away. He was heroic in a sense, but he got taken out by the heroes, but he could change his shape in all sorts of ways, but again, he's semi-divine. The next important thing is the Lamia, and they were kind of a Greek vampire as well. And what happened was that she was a queen in Libya. And of course, Zeus got involved in the way that he did. And that upset Hera. And so Hera took out her anger on Lamia. Thank you for that. Endless thoughts. No problem, Mangosaurus. Do come back in the next. There'll be another one tomorrow night. So it was great having you on, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. We'll see you around. Huge thanks to Endless Thoughts for that kindness, the great gift. And yeah, you have a great night too, Mangosaurus. Yeah, we are having a very good night. We have got a good couple of people on listening, which is great. So Hera took out her anger not on Zeus, which again was not good, but rather on Lamia. And she took Lamia's children, kidnapping them, hiding them, killing them, forcing Lamia to kill them. And this drove Lamia insane. And she began hunting and devouring the children of others because of what happened. Lamia was therefore transformed into a horrific creature because of her cannibalism. But Zeus gifted Lamia the power of prophecy and the ability, which this is a bit of a weird one. Hey, Jacqueline, you're on. Yay. A little bit of a weird one, because she could take and put back her eyes. Hey, heart. Why? I don't know, but maybe because Hera cursed her with insomnia, because the way she did it was that she couldn't close her eyes. So Zeus gave her the ability to take her eyes out so she could sleep, which is kind of creepy, but there you go. The Greek gods did weird stuff. Just know this. They were strange. Why? I don't know. But they got up to shenanigans. Now, she was apparently half woman, half snake. Afterwards, she would seduce young men and then eat them. Now, of course, she was the original Lamia. Other ones turned up as well, but we found analogues from all over, including the Libyan mythologies, as well as many others, the Nagas of Indian mythology. But these ones were bad, but it wasn't their fault. So again, you know, the Greek gods and goddesses really had a lot to answer for. And they blamed a lot of people, which is kind of not good. Now, we've spoken of satyrs. What is the difference between Pan, the satyrs, and fauns? So, let's try. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds, flocks, ritual rustic music, impromptu parties, and having nymphs as companions. Yes, for that reason. Here's the hindquarters and legs of a goat and the horns of a goat. He comes from Arcadia. The god of fields, groves, wooded glens, very much associated with fertility and sex and spring. He is connected to the Roman god, which is where we will see the connection to fauns, because the god in Roman mythology was Faunus. So actually Pan was Faunus, but the Roman version, who was the father of Bona Dea, and connected to all kinds of other woodlandy things in the Roman view. So that's that side. Now, of course, he's the original satyr, but there are other satyrs that were his children, I suppose. They were guardians of the forest, companions, companions. Yes, it comes from that. That is the etymology. So, yeah, they did worship Pan. He was absolutely one of the gods. So connected to caves and grottos, including the Acropolis of Athens. You've got a number of places around that are connected to Pan, which are important, I suppose. And even the places around churches, you might find things such as an inscription that was written on a Byzantine church. Athenion, son of Sosipatros of Antioch, is dedicating the altar to the god Pan Heliopolitanus. He built the altar using his own personal money in fulfillment of the vow he made, which is kind of cool, you know. He's connected to a varying number of different things, and he's sort of a green god in that regard. He's known to be involved in the battle against the Titans, and he was very important in that regard because Pan, in his goat god aspects, was actually attacked by Typhon, and he dove to escape into the Nile, of all places. So for that reason, therefore, he's also connected to the star system of Pisces, and may be to Egyptian mythology in that regard. It goes on. Our modern word panic comes from it, of course. His children, which he had with the nymph Echo. Yes, the word echo comes from echo. Vintage Pluto, don't worry for being late. We are carrying on for a little bit more still. And we're talking about shape-shifting in Greek mythology, but welcome nevertheless. So, yeah, he had two children, Lamb and Lynx. And Pan had fallen in love with Echo, but she scorned the love of any man except for Narcissus. As Echo was cursed by Hera to only be able to repeat words that had been said by someone else, she could not speak for herself. And she followed Narcissus to a pool where he fell in love with his own reflection and turned into a flower. And Echo wasted away, scorning her husband because of her love for this Narcissus. And all that remains is the sound of her voice, the echo. It's very sad. Pan also loved a nymph named Pitys, who turned into a pine tree to escape him, which didn't work well. Eventually, both Pan and Boreas, the north wind, were trying to get her to love them, and Pan won. And Boreas was very upset with this, and then killed Pitys. Yeah, you know, Greek gods, you know, assholes. Now, of course, we know that Pan is well known for the panpipes. His power was brought through the music he could make. So, very important in that regard. And those instruments are famous till today, so yeah. But he was also a faun from Faunus, the god that was the Roman equivalent of him, or possibly him. The Romans took a lot of Greek gods and changed them to Roman gods. So Jupiter was Zeus, really, and so on and so forth. So it kind of jumps across. So when they talk about fauns, they are in fact talking about satyrs in much the same way. Now, Rhea is another Greek mother goddess, the daughter of a Titan, which we remember as Gaia, and the sky god Uranus, who creepily was Gaia's son. Go figure. She's the older sister of Kronos, who was also a monster, who she married. Yeah, I mentioned that these Greek gods were a bit dodgos, but they are all connected to these half animal, half human creatures. So we have a lot. Now, out of all of those, we've come to the realization that by and large, when it comes to shape-shifting, it was usually a divine or a semi-divine in Greek mythology, or it was a punishment. So, for example, Arachne was turned into a spider as a punishment. Lacaun was turned into a wolf as a punishment. It goes on in that general state. The ones that are able to change their shape voluntarily are all somehow divine connected and have that skill which allows them to change as they please. So it's a very different situation from the therianthropes of other cultures, who very often are naturally like that and are able to change as they please because that's what they are. So the Greek versions are a bit odd in their methodology, though many of the creatures do turn up all over. That said, as we know, there are a lot of them in that regard, which means that there's no lacking of shapeshifters in Greek mythology. I think it would be fair to say that the takeaway in terms of therianthropes from the Greek is that it reinforces the understanding that there's more than one kind. There are those born that way, those who want to be that way and choose it, those who become that way as a means to an end through sorcery, those that are cursed to be that way. And of course, if you're one of those that are cursed to be that way, that's usually the situation where you have no control over your change, or possibly don't change at all until somebody changes you back. So, have I ever seen strange things? Many times. And in fact, one of the reasons that I started this channel is because I'm the sort of person who will ask questions. I want answers to stuff. And I'm also somebody that if I see something that I don't understand, I will look further into it. I'm kind of stupid like that. I grew up seeing ghosts and couldn't explain it. And I was either told that, no, you can't see it, you're imagining it, or I was told that you dreamt it, when I knew I didn't. So I've seen a lot of weird things, and people didn't explain them. And I wanted explanations, so I started looking for explanations. And of course it got me into a huge amount of trouble, because you're not allowed to ask questions like that. And I did. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a case that you should get involved with such strange things, or that they are good in any manner or form. I just want to know what it is. I want to know why it is. I want answers, and I've never been able to get them. And over the years, I've researched huge amounts of stuff about this. And then a mate of mine, who is somebody you should, if you like music, go and look for Skarpstad Radio on TikTok. I think he's on YouTube as well, but he does good music. Scarpy, he's a great guy. Definitely go and follow him and give him some love. He said to me, well, you know all of these stories and mythologies and things, and you've got all of this stuff that you've done. Why don't you put it on TikTok and make some videos? Because lots of people have these questions and don't dare ask them because, you know, like I was always told, don't get involved, don't ask questions, it's not for you to know. And I was like, stuff that, I'm going to go find out. In my life, I will tell you, I have seen ghosts. I have seen demons, or at least what we in the West would call a demon. It might have been something else. I can't honestly tell you for certain what it was, but it appeared that way. I've seen an unidentified flying object. I haven't seen an alien. I have seen something which could very well be a kind of Yeti type creature, which was very weird. I have known and spoken to witches of all cultures and varieties, which was really interesting in every occasion. I used to have a good friend who was an Isangoma, I should think that by now she has passed on, because she was old when I knew her. So that was many, many, many years ago. But nevertheless, it was fascinating. I have known proper British witches. I have known Wiccans. I have known all kinds of other things. Yes, the Otang. You are quite correct. And as I am indeed in South Africa, I would imagine that's what it would be. And when we get to doing South Africa, we will have to talk about that. So we will get to South Africa's shapeshifters and weird things as well, and do a deeper dive into that. We've already done quite a deep dive into the Tokolosh, which interestingly is probably more similar to the Navajo skinwalker than to anything else. It's not a natural cryptid, but nevertheless, so yeah, lots of strange things, and I do want answers, and I have researched all sorts of stuff for myself. There's a lot of people who tell me that I'm bad because of my interest in this, and that I shouldn't ask questions. And I think that if you don't ask questions, then you are stupid, because questions are what let us learn to grow. But I was not agreed with. When I was a monk and I was studying theology and all of that, I was often told off for asking questions that I suspect it was because they didn't have the answers. So there's that. I know many people who believe in mermaids, and one or two said they've seen them. I have not been so lucky, though I did grow up at the beach and I definitely tried. The closest I ever got to was Daryl Hannah. And if you are not at least 35, you probably never got to see Splash. It's such an old movie. So, sorry. But there you go. Not terribly accurate to mythology, but definitely perfect for a young teenager, for all the reasons. But yeah, the idea of these kind of things are firmly rooted in a lot of belief. And one of the things we've discovered, I've discovered, is that while people will say, but they're crazy thoughts, they're stupid ideas, there's no way these things could be or exist. If you stop and look at any religious belief, and you do it from the outside, so to speak, with cold science in mind, they're all pretty bloody weird in some way, with weird beliefs involved in them. So before pointing fingers, realize that all religions are not necessarily exactly pure science. You get weird stuff in all of them because it's the nature of things. And it's a human trait to say, this is good because it's religion, i.e. mine, and that's therefore bad or not real because it's mythology, it's not real, it's not religion, because it isn't their religion. And so when people talk of superstition, I could very easily argue that if you believe in anything that you don't have hardcore scientific reason to believe in, you're superstitious in one form. But on the other hand, that's not entirely true either, because belief is an integral part of being human, and it's very important. It enables us as humans to be human, to have hopes in a great many ways. So it's a very important thing in that regard. So absolutely, I I have gotten to a point in my life where I dislike calling something a superstition, because it's kind of derogatory, and all you're doing is saying is it's because it's not a belief that I have, it must be wrong. Well, different people have different beliefs, and really and truly the only answer is to respect all of them. I don't have to agree with you, but at the very least I can offer the respect of it if I am human, and that matters. So also there's reasonable evidence that might say that some of these cryptids do exist. So many people have claimed to have seen mermaids that you start saying, well, but if they were true, people would have seen them. Well, people have. Christopher Columbus, who was well known as a famous explorer, we accept everything else he said. He said he saw them. Why don't we accept that? What, because it doesn't suit us? And the same is true of Yetis, Bigfoots, all of that. There's a lot of things people have seen over and over again and describe exactly the same, despite being in cultures that are thousands of kilometers apart that wouldn't have had any connection, but they describe exactly the same thing. So maybe they don't exist anymore, but they could have. Maybe there are scientific explanations to explain it away. Maybe people were hopped up on mushrooms. I don't know. But then, if that's true, I can say all religion is probably somebody who was just hopped up on mushrooms, because you show me a piece of God. You can't. It's purely a belief. It might be a good belief, it might be a reasonable belief, but there's no scientific evidence of God. So must we discount the existence entirely? No. It's not sensible. So better to say that have respect and have appreciation for what other people believe and the stories, because if we don't learn about a real thing, at the very least you will learn about people, and that really does matter as well. So in that regard, nevertheless, and with all of that said, kind of a little early, we've sort of reached the end of Greek shapeshifters. And I don't know, what do you think? We could do shapeshifters and cryptids centered on southern Africa particularly, and maybe other bits of Africa as well. I don't know how many there are. I'll have to see to give us enough to talk about. Would you guys like South Africa next? We can do that, absolutely. I think it would be cool. Give me a thought, give me a comment. We can absolutely have a go at that, and I think it would be good to do so. But if not, we still have a number of places that need talking about in terms of shapeshifters. So there's no lack of places to go. But I think maybe we need to talk about Africa. The Weir lions, the Weir hyenas, the strange things that go bump. Yeah, I like the idea of that. What do you think, Endless Thoughts? Would you like the idea of that? I'd be more than glad to take your advice on this if you feel so moved. All right. And that's the decision then. Driller, join us tomorrow and we will do South Africa. Endless Thoughts, I hope I'll see you tomorrow as well. It's always wonderful having your company and your comments. So absolutely, if you've got any that you can come up with, do let me know. I've been checking out a couple of your little story keys with the Bible. I actually want to go in and do a proper watch of a few of them. I've been very busy lately. It's been gotten a bit out of hand at home, sorting this, that, and the next thing, and the weather has been playing silly buggers as well. So I've been sorting out that. I've been putting together a whole lot of. I do the books for my local dojo, amongst other things. So that's taken up a few things because we've got a grading coming up we have to organize. That's always chaos. Happy chaos, but chaos. So yeah, but I'm going to do more, I promise. And I've liked what I've seen thus far. So yeah, with that said, we have reached the end of tonight's live. It's been a really good one, a very interesting one. I do like the Greek stuff. I grew up with Greek mythology, so it's always been a bit of a favorite of mine, though I do have others that I particularly enjoy as well. The Nordic is probably my favorite. And then especially the Welsh cycles I do enjoy. The Mabinogion is right up there at the top of one of my favoured cycles, and of course the Irish, the Tainbo Culane is awesome. I really enjoy the Tainbo Culane. So yeah, there's a lot out there, and they make for great stories. But yes, with that all said, tomorrow South Africa, and tonight the pillow. So I shall bid you all a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining me. It's been great. Remember to like, share, subscribe, send on, and we will eventually put this live up as well onto YouTube. I'm furthering my way through them, but I can only upload so many a day because of rules. So I'm working my way through them. But until we get there, I bid you good night. Sleep well, sleep sweet, and sleep deep. But sleep with one eye open, and keep that holy object near at hand, because you never know of all those things that go bump in the night. If you are not careful, they might go bump for you. Good night.